Well, here we are again. Another Wednesday, another stream. We've got a few people in chat that I can recognize here. We've got a couple of adventurers. Quinto Goodbarrel. Bloody hell, Kinec's here. Hello, Kinec. The wife is, of course, in chat and on duty. The mod wife, so do behave yourselves. Who else we got? We've got one of the brothers, Bad Toad. Greetings. Hope you guys are going well. I am sorry to hear about your Kickstarter, but wish you all the best on Drive-Thru RPG. That is Mages, Mercs, and Monsters, or Mercs, Mages, and Monsters. For all of you guys that have missed their appearances on stream, there are an awful lot of you. Good lord, hello. Well, since there are a lot of you, Mr. Dean Hill Jowett, hello. I will try and remember to get to you as soon as. Balthazar, greetings. Raph, hello. Yes, there's quite a few new names. Quite a few new names indeed. So, since there are new names, I'm going to ask all of you that are new to please join the ranks, subscribe, and follow, because it definitely helps me out. We are a hair's breadth from monetization here on the channel, and the more I can get out of doing this, the better, because it means I can focus less on a soul-sucking retail job and focus more on giving you guys the content you want. You might have noticed I've been a little bit quiet since the last speaking or talking on the library. It's not a speakeasy, this isn't Rumble. It's been a hell of a couple of weeks at work, and I do apologize. Production continues on the big video. But for now, we shan't worry about that. Samuel Roberts, hello. Aaron Lind, hello. Good to see so many people so early on in the stream. Do drop a like and a share. It really, really helps, and it costs you nothing. Shall we bring in some people? You know what? We're going to switch it up. I always bring in a certain someone first, so I'm going to leave him for now. Last week, there was a wisdomous chap that I had on that really wanted to be a part of this conversation that's been tickling my brain. So I'm going to bring him on first. You all know him. You all love him. It is Agronax Studios himself. It's DM Wisdom. Hello, sir.
Hello. How are you doing?
Oh, is how I'm doing. How about you?
I think I'm nursing a hangover, so.
Oh, was it at least
yeah,
was
whatever.
It a good hangover?
Yeah, well, we played last night, our regular session, and one of our players, it was their birthday, so.
Ah, yes,
yeah.
So things got a bit out of control.
Yeah, we went a little overboard, and I gave out way too many magic items, so.
Yeah, well, I tend to do that anyway, or so I'm told. I hear that, see, everyone is saying, join the Jack Pack, join the Jack Pack, Jack Pack. I think Noble Shield has already shouted, Jack Pack represent. I'm never going to live this down. I had this idea. Oh, hey, Ultra. I had this idea for a really cool system. So I was going to set up a Patreon type thing. I had this idea for a really cool system of, like, knighthoods within a library sort of fantasy order. And I was going to make it all really intricate, give it all lore. No, they want to be called the Jack Pack. They don't want the ideas and the stories. Violent solves everything. Hello, welcome. Ooh, 50 viewers already. 52 already. Where are you lot coming from? Right. How was your Mystara video? I've got it in my to-watch list. I've not got to it yet, to be honest. But it's there. It's haunting me.
Yeah, I think it did. I enjoyed the production and going through it and all that. But it, you know how YouTube is. Sometimes you get a blast of people, and you grab onto whatever the algorithm is that week, and then it blasts off. So my Hail the Heroes one, I got like 5,000 views in no time, and I think I'm sitting around, I don't know, 800 on the Karmikos Mystara box set. So
well, what I'm gonna
sometimes it's hit and miss. It's whatever.
I find that myself.
Yeah.
Where are you? I'm going to scroll down here. Bloody hell. I will go and find that at some point in the stream, and I will link it. There you are. Found you. And early, I realise this will do nothing for you because you're so much larger than me on the platform. But chaps and chapettes, there is a link in the stream chat there. That ought to take you to DM Wisdom's newest video. Go and put it on the back burner. Don't go and watch it now because you're here. But do go and watch that at some point. It's on my back burner as well. Right, next. Next, we're going to bring in Mr. Kyle, the Dying Breed tabletop. Hello, sir. Oh, he's muted. Oh, he's boomed it up. Hello? Oh, no, still nothing from Kyle. Right, well, while Kyle's sorting his audio out.
There goes the neighborhood.
There we are. How you been, man?
I boomered it. Yeah, I did.
Of course, it's not been too long since we've spoken, as we speak at least once a week, if not twice.
Or more, yeah.
Stream type situation, stream type setting.
Yeah. Sure.
How's the storm?
Well, the storm has passed. We have extremely high winds. I could lose power at any moment.
Brilliant. Well, I like living close to the edge.
Well, the good thing is that historically, when we lose power, we typically lose it early in the storm, and then and then we're without electricity for like 3 days. The fact that it hit at very early this morning when I was going to work means that I'm optimistic that I will be okay.
Whereabouts are you at? Because we're looking at a storm too.
Kansas City.
Okay. Yeah, you're
Exact
way
middle
over
of the country. Yeah, exact middle of the country.
Yeah, and Wisdom's trying to put plans together for a gaming meetup there. It's just hopes dashed.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
Well, no real need to tell everyone what you've been working on, Carl, because they all know they can go over to Rumble at Nerdcognito and they can find us both there. In fact, the latest big show was a bit of a doozy. We won't get into details here because I don't want to bring down the vibe, but definitely worth a listen to, in my humble opinion.
Whoa. I gotta stop for a minute. I'm looking at the chat and I see Teddy Rex.
Yeah.
Should I do the Kyle reveal now on your show or wait for the speakeasy? What do you bastards have planned? What sort of conspiracy?
I say, Teddy, we'll wait till the speakeasy because now we can stew in it. Speaking of stews, I bet dragons love to eat stew. Here's a dragon.
Nah, they hate stew.
Hey, Stu, I don't like it. I don't like it.
Who's Stu?
My boss. Hello, Jeff.
I hate him.
No, like you're giving him the English accent there, but the brass dragon's actually a Welshman.
Yeah,
I'm from the English part of Wales.
Yeah,
I'm from the desert, actually.
I'm an American. I can't distinguish, right? So it's cool.
That's brilliant. Well, chaps, the brass dragon, actually, before we move on, not brass dragons, but black dragons over the last week.
Oh, yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about what your black dragon can do. Just roughly.
Well, I wasn't prepared for this. I haven't even got it up.
You only wrote it a couple days ago.
Well, I forgot what I wrote.
So you guys remember when we did the dragon stream and Brass came up with this super brass dragon stat block?
Yes.
Yeah, well, he's now going through with polls on his X page. He's doing dragon by dragon, and this time the black dragon got voted in. So he's got an ancient black dragon stat block, which is kind of brutal. Very brutal.
The rules I have imposed on myself, these are 5e stat blocks, and we all know that high-level 5e monsters are very weak. They offer no challenge, and they fold to a stiff breeze. But I have to keep their stats the same. Same AC, same HP, same attacks, and all that sort of thing. But I can add as many spells as I feel like, because I'm making the rules at the end of the day.
We all know Kyle loves having dragons that cast magic.
Oh, yes, he's going to love this one. He's going to love it. There are so many spells that this dragon can cast. The vast majority of them are invisibility and hiding and fleeing and guerrilla tactics and just being a dickhead, like a rogue.
I cast
As
dickhead.
should be.
Picture this: you're venturing through a murky swamp. It's all dark. There's mists everywhere. And apparently in the new edition, the mist is acidic mist. So you're taking 1d4 damage at random intervals, apparently. It doesn't actually say. It just says you take damage. Anyway, as you're heading through the mists, and it's heavily obscured, you settle down to camp. Whoever's on watch doesn't matter unless they have true sight, because this dragon is invisible.
Oh.
And has a really high... Wait, what does a dragon have on stealth? +9. Actually, that's kind of shit, to be honest, at level 12. You're probably going to see it coming. But if you don't...
You've got advantage.
If you're not paying attention, then he'll sneak up on you, acid breath the weakest member of your party while they sleep in their tent. Preferably, actually, you know what? He's going to acid breath the fighter now that he's taken his armor off to sleep and can't do anything about it. That's the best time to snipe the hardest hitter and the strongest character.
Yes.
In the group.
Hit him with a saving throw while his AC is slow.
While he's asleep. He's gonna. If you're a good DM, he's automatically failed. How are you going to succeed a dexterity saving throw when you're asleep?
You're not.
Think about that. You just take the full damage, and then as soon as the group starts fighting back, boys, it's over. He misty steps into the mist, invisibility again or something. Off he goes, and you're riled up. You're thinking, oh god, what happened there? He's destroyed all your camp supplies. Your tents are now gone. And now that he knows where you are, he's probably placed a hunter's mark on you or something like that. Whatever hunter's mark even does in 5e, I can't remember. Extra 1d6 damage or something. And I decided, this dragon, he needs to play into the spooky theme. Because black dragons are the spooky dragons. They're not just swamp dragons. This is what differentiates them from green dragons. Green dragons aren't scary.
And they're also not as good as green dragons.
Listen. When I tell you what this black dragon commands, your green dragon's not going to stand a chance. Right, there's a lot of walls of text here. But to sum it up, he's going to have your typical lizard folk. You know, with tribal elders and all that sort of thing that serve him. Now, this is an ancient black dragon. Service him, you know, you can take that however you want.
They take 10d10 bludgeoning damage every time they do that. They are all
reptiles in this room. Now then, because this is an ancient black dragon, I decided any dissenters amongst the lizard folk, any tribes, like, you know what, we're not really happy with black dragon rule. Well, they were dissolved, get it, hundreds of years ago. So they're no longer a problem. This dragon has a stranglehold on the swamp. There's no rebellious factions. He's ancient. He's been here for centuries. Anything living in it has lived their whole lives with this dragon in command. There's also a bunch of beasts. Now, unlike a green dragon, the black dragon won't command the beasts. It's just, these beasts are very venomous because they live in a horrible swamp. So, kind of like going through the Everglades, or some of the horrendous region of America. There's alligators. There's pythons that aren't supposed to be there. There's whatever venomous creatures, probably spiders and other snakes. You're wading through. There's leeches. You're getting leeched for 1 HP every step you take through the water or something. I don't know. And there's also acidic water, so there's that. Oozes, just like Jack used in his Black Dragon encounter. There's some black puddings that killed the cleric. Well, more of those. They're everywhere. Some Yuan-Ti purebloods, because...
Snake people.
And I decided they worship Dendar, the Night Serpent, and they just think the Black Dragon's part of Dendar's design, which I think is to cause terror, or something very vague. But the biggest one of them all is that the Black Dragon has allied himself with a Death Knight.
Ooh, now that is a cool...
dragons can raise the dead. This is an old lore, long forgotten.
Cool.
And so can a Death Knight. And so they're helping each other out a little bit there. And, pretty much that's about it. I've already told you his tactics. It's hit and run. If you enter his lair, there's going to be lots of different chambers, most of which are 70% submerged or more in acid. Or disease-ridden corpse water.
I like this.
So anywhere you go, you're fighting him underwater in narrow passages and things like that. He could breathe underwater. He's an amphibious dragon. And he has blind sight or whatever they have. So he could see you. He could breathe. He's invisible. Ever seen underwater, like, cave diving videos?
No, I wish I hadn't.
Well, imagine that,
Yeah.
but the water is acid. And there's a dragon chasing you.
Oh, look who's just shown up. Amazing Game Production says, time to absorb some great ideas. Well, we're out of them now. You've missed them all. That was it.
All done. All out.
I'm afraid, chaps, I've not been entirely honest with you. And chat as well, I apologize.
He never is.
I said this was going to be a really small and focused stream with just the four of us. There was a last-minute request from someone who I think kind of needs to be here, just to let off a little bit of steam after how upset he was on Saturday. It's the one. It is the only. Craft Paper Architect. Hello, sir.
My boy in the house.
Long time no see.
Yes,
Good to
what's
see you.
up?
Yes,
Ooh.
much cooler, much more sober version of me. So there you go.
I'll take care of the
Is it-
sober part, bub. Cheers.
Is that straight moonshine?
Yes. So
Okay.
the sober part won't last long.
Just wood alcohol. Just
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I have to have some kind of hobby to do in my garage, right?
Yeah.
Brew
He'll
me up.
either drink that or he'll keep something else up.
Daisy.
Either way he'll go blind. So
do apologize. Right, well, no, we've now got a rather more full panel than I was expecting, which means my layout's now mucked up. Cheers, GPA.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to cause chaos and destruction
can I do this?
everywhere I
Oh,
go.
look at that! I can do this. Hold on,
What the
I
hell
can-
have you done? You
Oh,
made it
now
worse.
we're all
Hey, there we go. It's my show. I can do what I want. Can I do this?
unfortunately.
Can I? What if I? Ah, there we are. Look, now I'm.
There we
now
are.
I look like I'm speaking to the camera, to you guys. Look at that. It's problem solved.
Ah.
Everyone
Well, I'm
knows
facing
what
Nice.
away from you because I don't care.
No, I don't like that.
I'm looking at graph. I'm looking at
I don't
GPA
like
for that.
this. Ah, where was I? There we are.
There you
Back
are.
there. Right. You know what? We're gonna put graph there. I'm gonna be down here on my own.
Am I backwards? Is my background backwards on the screen there?
Yes.
Yes, you are. Try mirror. There's a setting. Go into settings. You should be able to mirror
I
your
fixed
image.
it.
There you
Oh,
go.
Oh, so that wasn't demonic text. Okay.
It is, but I mean, it's old school, so yeah, it works.
GPA Nanu
You-
everybody, Teddy.
You look
Um,
like you look a lot better now that you're right side around.
Thank you.
Right. So, chaps, I have been thinking actually since our discussion with Griff, I believe, was when I started thinking more deeply about this, Kyle, a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And that is fantasy as simulation. Now, on Friday, you heard it here first. Wait, I have news. Everyone, last week I asked for prayers and thoughts for the Elven Maid Inn. You guys might notice she's not in chat, where she usually would be at the start. She went under the knife on Saturday about 12 o'clock. She came to, I believe, yesterday to okay results. She is now at the beginning of a very long healing process, so do please keep those thoughts and prayers rolling for the Elven Maid Inn. She is a pillar of this little niche of the internet that we inhabit. So please do keep her in mind. And now I'll continue with what I was going to say. I've been thinking an awful lot about simulations, simulating a fantasy world. I often say that the dungeon master is playing a character as well as the party is. And I think that character is the world. And I think Gary Gygax himself uses similar language in the Dungeon Master's Guide, that the Dungeon Master is playing all the other characters. Very similar, not quite the same. And it's my observation that simulation of a fantasy world doesn't really happen much. On Friday, I'm going to be talking one-on-one with the Dungeon Delver. So everyone mark your calendars, 9 o'clock GMT or 4 p.m. EST on Friday. we'll be talking specifically about fantasy simulation in video games, very much in the vein of the Elder Scrolls and what is on the horizon that could very much be a rebirth of fantasy simulation, the likes of which we have not seen, I think, since Oblivion, perhaps Daggerfall. So do keep an eye out for that. Master Jack McCarthy, hello. Yang Yan Zhao, hello. What do you guys think in terms of fantasy, not just video games, not just TTRPGs, but include both, exclude both, I don't mind. Simulation, actually simulating a fantasy world. Have you guys tried your hand at this before? Do you think about this sort of thing often? We'll go from the top and then we'll sort of zigzag down. So we'll start with Brass.
I never think about it ever.
Why are you here?
I don't know. I was asking myself that earlier. Nah, I mean, every now and then, you know, I guess it depends on what the fantasy world simulation is happening in. Is it D&D? Is it a book? Is it a video game? Is it a movie? Who knows? Because the answers on how you do that, how you simulate a fantasy world and those things, is going to vary depending on what.
Oh, wildly. So okay, we'll narrow it down then. On the tabletop, not necessarily.
That's better. That's.
So you spend a lot of time drawing maps. You spend a lot of time making genealogies, and you spend a lot of time thinking about things in terms of the great characters of a setting and how they have affected your setting over God knows how long. I mean, I've read through your lore library. It is quite extensive. I've played in your campaigns, and
you probably know more about it than I do.
I've played through your campaigns, and they do feel as if they are at least somewhat attempting to approach an illusion of simulation.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, my favourite approach as a DM, even though I get the feeling most of the group doesn't even like this approach, is I make the players, at least at the start, feel like an insignificant part of a wider world that's going on all around them, and they can only really matter at the local level to begin with. And I think this is just typical for D&D, really. You start off level 1s, you're killing goblins in a cave, and then by session 20, you're killing God. But
with the power of friendship.
What I find, like the current arc of my campaign, I guess there is world simulation in there. But for the most part, I've decided I'm just going to make this as close to a traditional hex crawl as I can, because I want to try it out. And also, I think the group that I'm with doesn't really pay attention enough or care enough to know what's going on around them. They're very tunnel visioned. They only really care about what is on screen, because we play on a VTT, in front of them at any given time. They don't care why it's there. I could throw a dragon, a lich, a demon, a devil, a bugbear, and an owlbear in the same encounter, and they'll just be like, okay, cool, let's roll some dice.
Now, hold on. I will say, I'll speak up for certain members of your group, i.e. myself and the wife. We might raise an eyebrow and go, why were these things together?
You might raise an eyebrow. I don't know if
I know the feeling. I have had certain frustrations in the past as well. But that doesn't.
And I would raise an eyebrow too.
That doesn't stop you from simulating other things. Like you showed us a full-on apocalyptic scale war that was happening on the other side of your fantasy world through portals and whatnot. So there is at least an effort at there being a world that is actively going through stuff.
I like putting that effort in, even if no one pays attention. I do Dark Souls style lore on every magic item I give out. No one's going to read the lore descriptions on them or care, but I like to put in that little bit of paragraph in italics when I give them the handout, and it's just, this is some general common knowledge on this type of item in the lore. I just think it's nice. It helps me build the world too. It helps me as the DM more than it helps the player.
Yeah, I would think I would agree with you. DM wisdom.
In regards to fantasy simulation, I think that that whole thing has to do with why I play. I want to feel like I am not on Earth, that I
Yes.
am in my own fantasy world. I start off every session letting the players know what the day of the week is, what month they're in, what the general weather is, what festival, holiday, or event might be taking place in and around where they're at. And so to me, that's almost like it's the precursor, it's the unfolding into that idea that now we're in this brand new world. We're not going to the local liquor store or to In-N-Out Burger, whatever, to get food. We're here, and the taverns are real. The streets are real. The people are real, and you get into that headspace. And so, if nothing more than just semantics, I think having those small little tidbits is huge and helps with that simulation. Even if it's nothing more than my players know that that's going to be at the top of the session, and that's how they know, okay, we're playing now. This is what we're doing. And so trying to bring everybody into that that simulation, that verisimilitude, is of the utmost importance. And in fact, I don't want to play a glorified board game. I want the lore, and I want to be deep inside of the fantasy world. So yeah, important.
So you brought up holidays there. I think the one thing that I noted about Dragons of Winter Night, and I still need to start Spring Dawning. One thing I noted about Dragons of Winter Night is they speak a lot about a Yule tide festival toward the end of that book, that everything is kind of happening around. It's it's just happening over Yule and the like, and it makes things more poignant, I find. I like the idea of calendar dates meaning something, because people have been putting much significance on calendar dates for a long, long time. Throughout the entirety of human history, we've been trying to track where we are by the stars, assigning different meanings to different days based on the position of the stars. I do think that is very good. I agree. So again, it's more of a verisimilitude. It's less about the direct simulation of it and just making it feel as much as possible as if a simulation is happening.
Yes.
And I think
I think that the players are going to fill in the gaps.
Yes.
When you have the little pieces here and there, they're filling in even your description. You could say a small little thing, and all of a sudden they've gone somewhere else with that framework in mind. And that's one of the things I love about playing role playing, is that not everybody is having the same experience or seeing the same screen. You can explain what a portcullis on the outside of a castle looks like, and everybody's going to imagine that different.
It's the same strength as a book.
Cohesive. Yeah.
Right. Let's see what Kyle has to say.
So the first thing I would ask is, I actually kind of want a more clear definition of what you mean by simulation.
I've left it vague somewhat on purpose, but I can provide you with one. The idea of simulation, I find, can actually cover this fake simulation, if you like, because I think that the dungeon master's brain kind of is acting as a dice processor for certain things that happen in the world around the players. So there is that way of simulating. The other way of simulating that I will be bringing up more heavily is the rolling of dice to determine what is going on around the players at any given time. Not necessarily to build something around them, but to use my example that I've used the past couple of weeks, a little while ago, there were 2 drow that should have been very good at hiding, but I actually roll for their stealth behind the scenes before the session starts to determine whether or not they're hiding successfully. That is simulating the result through the mechanics of the game, without me just declaring it that they are some way or another. So there's that way of simulating. There's also more simulation stuff that could take place on a much more macro scale without the DM really knowing he's doing it, like which countries are going to war around the players. I suppose this would have more stuff to do with domain style play, and where do you start simulating things like supply lines? How many mechanics do you apply to that? Slash, do you just sort of try and make it make sense in your head and give it as much reasonableness as possible rather than roll loads of dice for it?
Right.
That kind of thing.
But it wouldn't necessarily have to. As far as simulation goes, from the way I understand it, and not discounting what you've said, here's what I'm going to say. I think what we're really talking about overall is immersion, and immersion for the players in particular. And when you get to that sort of thing, simulation, and this is going to sound trite, but simulation is what you can get away with. So, and what I mean by that is it's going to look very, very different from one group of players to another. So if I've got a table and let's say I've got 4 players and 3 of them are geologists. Okay, they're going to have serious problems, and I'm not throwing shade on Tolkien. They're going to have serious problems with Tolkien.
Yep.
Right? Because of plate tectonics, rain shadows over mountains, while you've got a lush agricultural landscape on the west side and Mirkwood on the other, right?
Yep.
If you run a game with guys who are military, former military, or law enforcement, your combat scenarios are going to look a hell of a lot different than for teenage boys.
Yep.
So ultimately, what it comes down to for me is I really think that simulation is what you can get away with, meaning you need to know your players. If you're running something like a convention game, or you're going to your local gaming store and you're running something there and it's a pickup game, then you just kind of got to roll with the punches and do the best you can.
Yeah.
If it's a dedicated table and it's people that you know, you need to adapt to that. That doesn't necessarily mean that, I need to have enough study to give me a complete background so that essentially I would have a bachelor's in geology. But I do need to be able to keep that sort of, as DM Wisdom said, a verisimilitude up, right? It needs to be accessible and believable to the table.
Let's take your example of geologists or whatnot having issues with Tolkien's plate tectonics.
I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that. Go ahead, do it.
No. I think it's a good. What the point you're making is valid, and that people of certain persuasions will have difficulty accepting the reality of certain fictional elements in a fantastical world. I find Discworld hard to believe, but I'm not really a Discworld fan, but I find the idea of Discworld more difficult to believe than Tolkien.
Go ahead.
So, just to say that, because and this is a point I've made several times before, and I got a lot of heat for, that people's suspension of disbelief, one person's strength of that suspension is variant to somebody else's strength of that suspension.
Sure. Yes.
But I think there's probably quite a few geologists who have the ability to kind of go, right, what are the rules for this world's creation? Not necessarily what are the rules for our world's creation and why don't they match up?
Well,
so how would you simulate the way a world comes into being and the way Tolkien definitely did, because he thought about this a lot, and it came into world being through song, not through natural processes.
Tolkien was a professor of language. He was a linguist.
Mm.
And he started, essentially what happened is he created his own language, and then he built a mythology around it, right?
Mm.
People are much more willing to overlook Tolkien with his discrepancies in, say, real world geological and like biomes and that sort of thing.
Because it's mythological, not geological.
Because of the depth of the lore involved, right? So he kind of screwed up on one end, but he overcompensated on the other, and people are more willing to.
Is it a screw up if it's on purpose?
I think he just didn't know. He was
Maybe.
a language professor, man. He didn't understand biomes. He probably never heard the rain shadow effect, right?
Maybe
one
not.
One side of those mountains should be arid, not necessarily desert, but arid.
True. A couple of adventurers in the chat is actually bringing up my point in a better way, and that is Discworld is inherently consistent, which is what I think we're both getting at. Is if there is inherent consistency, it's easier to overlook flaws from the fictional to the real.
Right.
If we can accept that there can be simulations with elves and dragons, we can do silly simulation as well. Just depends on the table. I realize that. I realize that. That's a bit more at me, but I get that.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily completely disagree, but I do have. I'm sorry. It's just maybe it's the old man in me. I'm old, but I don't like this fantasy as a cop out. I just don't.
I agree,
and
but I don't necessarily think it's a cop out there.
Not with Tolkien, no, because of what he established. But
if you were to turn around and say to
but if I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna use random generation, blah blah blah, and it's like, here's this town, and oh look, here's this river, and oh my god, it's running uphill.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. That's fucking stupid.
That is stupid. That's very
stupid. So then the players call you out on it, and you're all, oh, my magic.
It's magic.
Fantasy. It's fantasy. If you believe in dragons, why can't you believe this?
Yeah, that's very true. But in terms of inherent consistency, if you've set up a rule for gravity, the river is not going to run uphill. Which is kind of what I was getting at there. Like the inherent consistency of Tolkien's world is par excellence, to use the devil's language.
I love Tolkien. Don't get me wrong.
I know you. I mean, look at me.
I've got didn't understand climatology at all.
All right. Well, we'll bring in GPA, fantastical simulation GPA.
Well, for Tolkien, I think you were just bringing it up. I was going to bring up the rain shadow effect, and like they have one I've seen, and so it kind of makes sense, I guess, but also doesn't. And there's a lot of different things. I'm going to start from the top, coming down. So if you are I'm going to go with Kuntz on this. There's conceptual, and then there's mechanical simulation. And where that bridges and what people are using in order to give themselves that feeling of a simulation. Conceptual, I'd say, if you have a fantastic world and has explanations for things like water running uphill, which is pretty extreme, or if you had Discworld, that's kind of extreme, but it really doesn't play a part unless they go all the way to the edge of the world and are looking at the elephants on the turtle. I mean, if they don't ever experience that, then that may not come to pass. But so in simulation, where I like to go with it, and this is now coming to DM Wisdom's wisdom, for lack of a better term, is having all of the elements in there that you can start with the macro. It is the 22nd of June on the month of this, and during the week of this, during the celebration of the cats, and you're located near one of the villages that has a cat festival and these things going on. Coming from that and moving to the micro, which would be, it's a beautiful spring morning. The breeze is just right. Carried on the breeze is the scent of some flowers, the fresh green of the forest. And as you look out upon the field adjacent to the trees where you encamped, you can see some wildflowers that are coming up here and there, spraying up amongst the tall grass. And so you don't have to get really, really granular and say that it's, 38 degrees Celsius or whatever, but you give them from the macro down to the micro. And I like to tap all the senses,
I do too.
smell, taste, feel, all of these different senses that you can tap. And it brings that sense of immersion. It brings that sense of simulation to people that are able to put themselves in that space. But as Brass Dragon was saying, we're constantly being pulled out of our theater of the mind with nifty visuals, and they can accentuate and assist in bringing that simulation to life, or they could just become whatever it is that you're looking at. You're just looking at it. You're like, oh, it's Trollforge or whatever, and this is what it is. Then you've got to add in those other elements, what it smells like, what it feels like, what's going on, what you might be hearing in the distance or up close. All of the different senses that can bring someone into the simulation when they begin to start feeling what's going on. And that's kind of where you're going for. But that's why I play too, is if I'm not feeling it, it's like I'm just having a board game. I am now, paying rent on this property, blah, 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 I want to be in it. I want to be like, wow, it's here and it smells and it tastes and it feels, all those kind of things for simulation. Then on the other side of the coin that I've seen in simulation, and it also kind of goes back and forth with the video games, but in tabletop, since we're sticking to tabletop, you've got things like, you can get all the way down to granular. You're tracking your rations, you're tracking your water, you're tracking your ammo, you're tracking, how does it work? You can get into weapon type versus armor type. You can get into lots and lots of granular things that can make it more simulation than game. So you find the sweet spot between, hey, we're playing a game, we're having fun, or it's like, man, it's like you are 2 degrees to the south and you've got 60% of your weight on your left leg, like you were talking about, Kyle. If you're describing a tactical situation to someone from martial arts or military background, it's like, okay, they are 4 feet in front of you. You've got 60% of your weight on your left leg. Your right shoulder is just a little bit back. You got, there's lots and lots of little factors.
You could
bring someone in.
You could get to that level, but I mean, we talk about a willful. Yeah, we talk about a willful suspension of disbelief, but I think what's more powerful is an unwillful suspension of disbelief.
Yeah,
agreed.
Exactly. And so if you bring in all the natural senses, then it just automatically kicks in. Anything that auto kicks, they don't have to think about it. They're not looking at their sheet going, I have 20 bullets, blah, blah, blah. It's like,
yeah. Have you ever played a game with like former military guys?
Yep.
Okay. You know what I'm talking about then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like 2x2 cover, and it's all this bullshit. It's like, exactly. Dude, I'm a dude that drives a truck, right? I don't know this shit, and so it's difficult to.
Where am I in relation to the enemy? What exactly is in my environment? What exactly is going on? It can get very
cover, and you get those bonuses and disadvantages for the opponents and blah blah blah. But then that, as as a DM, that forces you to up your game when it comes to the monsters, right? Because you can't just throw, there's 5 orcs and they charge you. I mean, you've got to do something more than that, because these guys will mop the floor with them all day long.
Yeah. Or if you do have orcs, you got to have some. You're like, okay, you've got 3 big linebacker orcs. They're 7 feet tall. They're 300 pounds, and these guys are here. And maybe some more tactics, so they have some archers in the back that are hanging back.
Yeah, I'm not trying to interrupt, but anyway, yeah.
No, that's fine.
You chaps have all gone a very granular direction, really, with this. In fact, from the Brass Dragon, 2 DM wisdom, 2 Kyle, 2 UGPA. We've actually gotten smaller and smaller to the point where you're talking not just about tracking rations, but the percentage of weight on one's leg in a fight, which I would think would probably get a little bit hard to keep track of for most groups.
Yeah, it does. Well, and it goes to
especially mine and Brass's groups.
Yeah. But that speaks to Kyle as well, because if you know your players. So if you talk to your players and they're like, oh, I love to track rations and how much armor I've got, blah, blah,
remember,
blah, that makes it real for them.
Remember what I said at the start of this conversation. You have your players, or they play their characters, but the dungeon master or the game master or the referee, whatever you want to say, is also a player themselves, and they have a character to play. Yep. And the character they are playing is the world itself and all that is within it.
Okay.
There is... how familiar are the lot of you with Critical Role Campaign 2?
Not Campaign 2.
See by the looks on their faces.
This is why I wanted you around.
I watched most of 1.
I didn't watch any of 1. I watched about a quarter of 2. But I wanted to bring Brass in particularly because I think he'll be understanding what I'm saying here, and maybe he can help me sort of get it across to you old chaps. No offense. Damn. In Campaign 2, when they leave the second city, I think for the first time, they are traveling for several days. They're doing the ration thing. They're doing the setting watch thing. You know, they're playing travel. A few days into their journey, they see a shining mass of armor approaching them, marching, an army. And they get off the road, but they don't hide. They just watch it go by. And Matt Mercer, in doing this, I think Matt Mercer is an excellent dungeon master.
He is.
Say what you like about his fan base, but I think he's an excellent dungeon master.
He is.
He describes all of this in such a way, tapping those senses as you were speaking of, Graf, in a natural way. And he gets across that the world at large, the events of the macrosphere, not the microsphere of this world, is moving along around the party, whether or not the party is involved or no.
Yes.
This is the sort of thing that I wanted to get at. I didn't stop you in terms of the micro simulation bits of like, oh, is water doing this or is the weight on the leg doing that? I want to know how you as a dungeon master, as a characterful world, because we are narrators in the most primal of senses, how are we handling the encounters that our players aren't having? So let's say, for instance, my most successful campaign of recent years was set in my homebrew world of Varfal. And it was set in one kingdom of Varfal. In that kingdom of Varfal, called the Westling, there are several dukes, duchies, royal families, and all the rest of it. The players only really interacted at a very surface level with it. But I knew that House Goldrun was plotting to undermine the royals of House Morsword. I knew that out of the west, across the Westling Inn Pass, through the Pass of Redwatch, the Dark Lady Malthaela was bringing in, under magical darkness, right under the noses of the dwarves, giants, orcs, Wilvalian mercenaries. I knew that Glakos the Mage was summoning forth from the outer dark demons with meteoric iron to try and recreate the dark sword that his lady held, because he wanted to try and overthrow her. I knew that the Battle of Last Shame, which Brass Dragon's character fought in, way before the campaign's technical start date, happened several hundred miles to the south across the Tearflow River with named characters from named families doing actual things that other dwarves would reference to him. So it's a good thing that you read your that little handout, Brass, at the time.
I knew all of this too.
And it was
everything you just said.
Exactly. Because you're a good lad, you read the lore. But you did actually do a good job at the time. You may have forgotten now, but you did a good job of recognizing names at the time of important figures that were around for your character's history.
I probably had the document open at the time because I
What
suck at remembering names.
But not only that, I had simulated NPCs in such a way that my friend, my best friend, Josiah, he had an entire family of NPCs that he never touched, and therefore got deranked from being best friend. And he and my wife, their characters were intertwined at the hip because her character was adopted into that family because her father was in jail. Not only was he in jail, he was actually sat in that jail. The guard was named, and he had
I
ways of
never
getting
knew
messages
any of
in
that.
and out. Yes, but not all the players had the same knowledge.
Hmm.
Sean was actually interacting with Hannah's father character a lot through messages. The drama goblins. Hello, sir. So it's this idea that there are many different moving pieces of a world. Whether or not the water's flowing uphill doesn't really matter. But there are many different pieces, different factions, different events taking place that shape the world around the characters and then actually provide conflict for them to step into of their own volition. You're not railroading them because this stuff is happening around them, but they can choose to interact with it. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Right. And all of this is happening just to you and with you, within you.
It's also part of the fun, I think, of being the DM. Because if I'm sat alone, I'm thinking about how I am running the world.
Yeah.
So I know that, look, none of us here do one-to-one time, I don't think. If I'm wrong, raise your hand. Ever done one-to-one time? Exactly. So
Real life.
when the character pauses and we sort of take a break from the movie and we step outside, I'm thinking about what is happening around the things that the characters are doing. A fantastic example, I'll let Brass tell it, is there was a death where we actually rolled out the battle between ourselves. I helped him simulate this, of one of the named villains. We rolled out the battle because there was an NPC, which was a sort of an ally-ish, like a frenemy of the party. And there was a villainous hag that we were sent to kill. On our way, the person that was tied to that hag died horribly. I killed him.
Before you were going to let me explain this.
Oh, yes. No, go ahead.
There was a hag and an NPC and a character died on the way to what he was saying.
But the bit I was going to say was you then introduce a third, like a replacement hag around these actions, so for us to interact with.
Yeah. So the general rundown is, I'm sure some of you have heard about the paladin death in my campaign that Jack talks about all the time, where he killed the paladin, his evil actions. But there was an inquisitor, and inquisitors in my world are sort of like they're like blades in the dark for the
40k inquisitors.
In a sense, yeah, but not quite as powerful. They're more like shady rogues, but they work on behalf of the church. That's what an inquisitor is. And there's one of them wandering around the swamp. The characters are very familiar with, very shady. And he was waiting for the paladin to go to this hag because that hag was the paladin's wife. And he's like, you know what? I respect your oath of redemption by, redeeming your wife. Go there, cleanse her of this curse, try and free her from the matron's will and all that. But he was taking too long. So the Inquisitor's like, right, it's my time. I'm going to go there. And because the paladin died on the way there, he never got chance to stop that Inquisitor. And I said to Jack, I was like, look, that hag's probably dead because the Inquisitor's gone for it. And he's like, well, why don't we roll the battle and see? And he played as the Inquisitor. I played as the hag. He did a terrible job with the Inquisitor, to be honest. But he still won. And I was like, you know what? Great. That's wonderful. Because now we know how they won. We know where the fight took place. And to be fair, it was close. It could have went either way. So
why you always
there's a
roll
difference
these
there
things
between the DM going, oh yeah, this guy just goes up to that other monster you know about and just kills it. Would he be able to in an actual fight? Or are you, as the DM, just deciding that happened because it's a story, I guess?
And then further to that is, after a session or two, there's a bit of a time skip in the campaign. After a session or two, a new hag arrives at the city in reaction to our player characters arriving there, a sea hag of sorts. And she comes and she invades the harbour. before she is repelled. So it's this idea of there is a world that is reacting to things that happen within it, which I think is a fantastic example of what I'm talking about. Again, we'll reverse course actually, and we'll hope that Kyle is sort of back in time to have his turn. But whilst we're reversing course, guys, do your duty and like the stream, because there are over 100 people across all platforms watching, which is fantastic. Very, very good for me, and I appreciate all the support. It helps an awful lot. It doesn't cost you a thing, only some effort. Right, Mr. GPA, do you see now where I was going with this conversation?
Absolutely, and it's something I do as well. And it's a sign of a very fertile mind, and one that is a world-building mind. Not everybody can do it. A lot of people want to. Some people want to. There are classes that you could take to help you with that: screenwriting, script writing, creative writing, workshops.
Don't do any creative writing classes. I can tell you that from experience.
Well, you can. I mean, and you might get a good structure. Who knows? But I think that in reading is definitely you have to feed that soil. If you don't have enough in your soil, you're not going to grow a magnificent, wonderful world that you can then simulate, because you're correct. The dungeon master is the world simulator. We're the computer. We're the ones that are coming up with everything that's going on, and it's all happening all around. And I think that part of the unfortunate trouble is that the way that computer games are built, video games, because tabletop, we had that. I mean, back in the day, tons of us had that kind of stuff. If we had DM powwows, it was crazy. It was like, oh, my world does this and my world does that. And then somebody had just gotten done reading, Dune, so they had desert worlds, or they were making, they have fantastical ones where they have huge boulders floating in the sky and whatever else was going on. And how exactly those physics would work, how does that work? And try to steer away from just, well, it's magic. Meh, some of it is magic, some of it isn't, but absolutely, you have all that because we had a lot of resources and fertility. And what I've seen happen now with video games and stuff is that you don't have that feeling or experience, because even in a MMO, even especially in MMOs, I mean, stuff doesn't happen until you get there. Like Skyrim, whatever you want to play.
Now,
any of these games,
you need to watch the upcoming stream with Delver, because we will be talking about Skyrim versus older Elder Scrolls games specifically.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to that, because I've been there and played all that Daggerfall and everything. And some of it gives you the feeling of stuff's going on when you're not there, but other stuff, it just doesn't happen. And I think that players, unfortunately, kind of get that idea and that feeling of nothing's going to happen without them being there, so they're just going to go, and then things will happen only once they arrive. And that is where I think new DMs can start, And also, I would encourage new DMs to, don't get discouraged if you're not at a place where I'm at, or Jack's at, or any of us here are at. We start off with, okay, we are here and we have a module that is this, that I have studied, so I know that. Or I have read this one book and that. And it's like, that is it. And there's nothing else. So if your players go, well, we see the town ahead, but we're just going to turn left and just go. And you're going, and that's perfectly fine, because that's where we start. And then you can roll some random encounters, and you can generate some more stuff. So I love it. I think we should strive for that world building, strive for the ability to world build, to get to the point where you can do it on the fly, or where you're doing it in your spare time. Maybe it becomes a novel like Dragonlance, maybe it doesn't. And then back to our one discussion about railroading, don't marry it. Don't marry your world.
Everything in moderation.
Well, moderation sometimes, and sometimes overkill is great too. But when I say don't marry your world, I mean in your mind, you were just explaining all these other events that were going on and all these different areas, and you're conceiving all these areas. Well, what happened if, your players somehow threw a complete monkey wrench into it and killed a specific NPC, or
if that
whatever.
happens, that's where the simulation, that's where the processor kicks in.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
is the processor. This is where you go, right, the reason you simulate these events isn't so that the players can't touch them. The reason you simulate these events is so that the players can be the monkey wrench, so they can cause problems, and so they can get involved in an outcome of them. We don't just let things go on. Like, if I'm telling stories to myself about the way certain activities are happening between NPCs that are around the party, if the party suddenly inserts itself into that area, all of a sudden that story is going off the rails, and that's kind of by design. So no, I completely agree. Railroading, very bad, but I think it is definitely not.
But don't be afraid to build the railroad. Just don't marry it. Build your world, build the track, because you're building. If they never take that track, then that track runs on its own. And
exactly. Like, what I don't get is this argument, well, why would you do it if the players aren't ever going to see it? Well, one, because I take pride in my work, and two, because they might. And because you never know where these things might intersect.
Yeah, it's fun for you, and you can also then, from all of that writing, then maybe in the future, you're like, this becomes a novel.
We'll go on to Dying Breed. Kyle.
I'm very much in line with you, and basically, so I guess I didn't understand simulation before, or what you were getting at. But what I will say is this:
you threw a monkey wrench.
I am a top-down world builder. That's just my nature. I build everything from the top down, and I start with plate tectonics.
Someone in the chat was saying earlier on you should start with that sort of thing.
That's what I start with, and I work down from there. So why did this kingdom arise? And you look at. I think the best the resource that we have is history. So if you look at like the Roman Empire and the French and England, and you look at all these different countries, and not just in Europe, you can look at the Americas too, you can look at Asia and all these sorts of things for inspiration. But ultimately what I do is I essentially create a sort of timeline. If the players do not interfere, these are the major players in the world / factions. Here's what's going to happen. This is going to be the outcome. Now, if the players interfere, then everything's off the table, because I'm like you say, railroading bad, right? Yep. So if the players inject themselves into that situation, they have the opportunity to essentially change the course of history.
Just to clarify, so you've got like secondary effect there. So you've got the primary timeline. If nothing changes in the balance of the situation of, say, a war between factions.
If the players decide, we're going to create it, we're going to go make a taco stand and sell coffee at the
very modern Dungeons and Dragons of you.
Then the evil queen that usurped the throne is going to either do this or that, and either accomplish your goals or not. Right?
So that's the second scenario. So that's the secondary. The tertiary could be this kingdom here and this kingdom here are at war. The players do something behind this kingdom here, which this kingdom would have won. But the players that are behind it doing something, not even in that kingdom, but affecting that kingdom's supply right, maybe.
Sure.
That kind of thing, that in my world, something I think about is that this is what I mean by simulation. Like, you're actually thinking about the dominoes and the ripples, and these ripples are sort of going over absolutely. One another and becoming very messy.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. You're 100% correct. If the players go and they're not interacting with whatever, it's like GPA said. It's like you've got a railroad, but you're not married to it, right? My timeline is a railroad. but I'm not married to it. If the players go in and they kill the black dragon, sorry, Brass, and
Right,
they
he's
get
there to be killed.
and they get the treasure hoard and they upset the local economy, that has a ripple effect throughout the kingdom, right? When for the want of a nail, a shoe was lost. For the want of a shoe, a horse was lost. For the want of a horse, I mean, the old adage, right? I mean, and it spirals to the point that the battle was lost, and because the battle was lost, the war was lost. I mean, that sort of thing is certainly, it's something that the players can do.
Mr. Wisdom. He's muted himself.
He's muted.
Yes, I'm unmuted now.
Boomers. Surrounded by them.
I think in terms of whatever strikes the fancy. I like the idea of doing a timeline. But I also see that as dungeon masturbation. Where you're kind of just playing with yourself. And really only if you mention it to your players does it do anything. So giving the example with Critical Role, and here comes this shining army down the road. If that army had not crossed their path, then they would not have known about it. And so I tend to think in terms, sometimes I'll think big macro, but oftentimes I'm thinking more micro. What are the players involved with? Well, I'm doing a West Marches style campaign. We've been doing it. We're like next week will be session 40. And so we're about 9 months in or so. And so things that affect them, tax increases, businesses shutting down and new ones possibly moving in. How does that affect what they're doing? Well, they used to
but why? But why? Why are taxes increasing?
The thing is that you can, depending on what the tax is, you inform that. So you don't have to do, going back to the term, you don't have to do necessarily the dungeon masturbation and go, well, I need to go 10 levels back to find out why these taxes are increasing. Sometimes it's just a tyrant, but sometimes it is, the logging is not as prosperous as it should be.
The thing about masturbation, it feels good and it's fun.
No, well, that's the thing, and that's fine. And again, I will do these sorts of things and go through, okay, what's happening in the world at large? Is the kingdom that the characters are in, are they being affected by another nation? And those are great questions to go through periodically, but I don't think it's necessarily helpful week in and week out when you've got an hour or two to develop what's going on.
So this doesn't necessarily mean that you're sitting down with a pen and a notepad to go through all the minutiae. A lot of this happens while I'm at work and I'm just thinking about this rather than having to think about my work day.
Right.
If I need to make a note, I will. But I fortunately have the mind where for this kind of thing, I can just remember it. If you ask me to remember someone's birthday or an important date or what I did with my pen, can't help you. Ask me what happened in the Brass Dragons campaign 3 years ago, I can tell you perfectly. That's the kind of brain that I unfortunately am cursed with.
The question, though, is what is the touch point? Speaking of masturbation, what is the touch point for your players? What is the touch point?
And here's where I'm going to come back with, why does there have to be one? Why can't it be for me? Because they could touch it.
It can be.
They could touch it.
And
in terms of what? Just so we're all on the same page.
If that is your goal, is to satisfy yourself, then by all means,
Kind of.
go for it.
Kind of. The reason I say the Dungeon Master is a player too, the character he plays as a world, is because he is allowed to have fun. I find a lot, and Kyle, I think, will have my back at this, a lot of modern Dungeons and Dragons, especially on YouTube, is player builds, how to ruin your DM's game, how to make sure your DM hates you.
Oh,
I
it's
think
true.
what's
It's true.
forgotten, like I really like D&D shorts. I don't really watch him anymore, but I like him as a guy. I dislike his content because I don't want to break the Brass Dragons campaign. I want to live in this world.
Right.
We're going to go back to that immersion, verisimilitude type thing.
Before we get too far ahead, I wanted to bring up something that Wisdom sparked. So let me know.
Wisdom Spark.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, so we'll come back
exactly.
to
Because there's friction, you know, sometimes there's friction when you're doing all of this.
Yeah, well,
and
God,
stuff, so
this stream's not getting monetized.
Well, you know, you went there. I just had to go along. I'm good at that.
I didn't. He
I
did.
be on the railroad. No, but what I was talking about is what was very interesting. So, Wisdom says, okay, their taxes could be going up, and then Kyle's like, okay, but why are the taxes going up? And it really reminded me of something, and it's interesting to think. If you have your simulation and you're building your world, right? Your world building, and if you are already creating something, so you've created something, and that's going on its own, and then the characters can interact with it, that sort of thing. Or they're in there, they're doing stuff. You then say, well, you know, you're there and you need to go down to the docks to figure out what's going on because the taxes on fish have gone up, right? And that's it. Now, if they decide to grab hold of that, I just had the term in my mind. It's the film term. But if they grab a hold of that thread.
A MacGuffin.
The MacGuffin, exactly. Thank you. If they grab that MacGuffin, now you have a thread. Then suddenly they go, well, why are taxes going on? Let's involve that. And then the DM can go, oh, well, I just put it there because it was going to make things work and things interesting. And then you can go, well, you know, the mermaids are on strike and you can't get the fishing going on. And, you know, you start coming up with generating ideas. So that's another way to world build, though. That's where I'm coming from, is that you don't necessarily have to try to write, you know, Lord of the Rings and then have people play in it. You can simply
But I want to.
Well, no, you can. Absolutely. I'm not saying you can't, but it's also a very fun exercise to just go, this is what's going on. This happens. And if they don't pick it up, they don't, and you just move on. But then if they do pick it up, then that particular thing's like fog of war disappears on that.
Right.
Oh, yes. Now we've got this going on, you know?
And
it's when you're putting in these moving parts and you've got the world lore, just you creating the world and your players engaging in that is awesome. Now, if you're putting in these other moving parts and your players grab onto this, and this is something maybe you've just come up with, have been brainstorming, and like Teddy Rex said, it's more of a dungeon-gasm. And so it's good stuff that you got going on there, you know?
Yeah. And you'll find that, I think, with the younger inexperienced players, they'll be in there, they'll listen, they'll be attentive, and they'll just go along. Some of us that have been playing for a long time, a bit, might just be sitting there and decide, you know, all right, I want to know why the taxes are higher, or I want to know why there's no chicken being served at the inn this time. Just go down something totally random. Whatever.
And it blossoms. It's kind of like,
and it can blossom.
Did you guys ever play Oblivion?
Yeah.
Where you wander around the town and there's the really stiff, uncanny valley NPCs, but these NPCs
really
will wander
stiff.
up to
You
each
sure,
other, and they will say, "Greetings! Oh, hello! Any news from the other provinces of Tamriel? The Altmer are refusing Imperial wizards. Oh, that's not good. The Altmer are blah, 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 blah. And now you're never going to interact with this because it's on the other side of the world. But what
and then
it
they walk
does,
off a cliff.
And then they walk off a cliff. But what it does is it provides this idea that the world is actually a living, breathing, lived-in place. Before we go any further, I do want to bring the brass dragon in, and I also want to put the ticker down here. to get everyone ready for Q&A. So, questions, please do put them in chat, and we will get ready to answer a few.
I'm
But
going to
Brass,
follow up when Brass is done, but go ahead.
Brass is
So
dead.
what are you bringing me on?
Well, look, we've been talking about this for a little while. You've had a little. You should have
I
absorbed.
thought you were
some
going to
info.
ask me a specific question.
No, it's just we're now we've gone from the micro simulation, and I'm trying to zoom back out to the macro.
Right.
You've already used 2 examples from your campaign, but I feel that your and my styles are somewhat similar, not exactly the same when it comes to simulating world events that the players may not actually interact with, but still serve a purpose for your own enjoyment. So yeah, talk about that.
I think that's because both of us, I'm currently doing it, and you did it with your last campaign, set the D&D campaigns in the world of our novels. So we're world building, and me and you had the exact same reason for doing this, and that is I'm gonna make a D&D campaign in this world because I want to build my own lore. I want to establish things. I want to get ideas and inspiration for it as well. And doing a D&D campaign in that world can help do that quite a lot, because I found, and I think you probably found as well, when you were just either playing in the Sword Coast or some other random homebrew setting you came up with out of nowhere, you're putting all your creative effort into D&D. Every week you're thinking like, right, this is what I'm going to do for the next session. This is what these plot lines are going to do. You're listening to some epic music in the background, and you're no longer picturing a battle scene from your novel. You're picturing a battle scene from your campaign. And it takes your creative inspiration away, and now you're not writing anymore. So we both decided, let's mix the two. Let's have a D&D campaign in our writing world, and therefore we can build as much lore as we want, and it doesn't matter if the players don't see it, because I'm seeing it, and I'm honestly using, like we play on Roll20, I'm using that Roll20 game as a lore library for myself. I'm going through, and I'm writing the book, and I'm like, wait, what was the name of the bear god again? Hang on a minute, I've got a list of them in Roll20, because I wrote it down for the players that never read.
Yeah, but Brass, they are seeing it. If you're a top-down world builder, the players are seeing it. They may not even realize it. You may not even realize it. But when they go to the inn and they talk to the innkeeper, all the events that are going on behind the scenes, why taxes are going up, why this is happening, that influences that conversation. You know, the innkeeper's like, I'm sorry, lads, we don't have fish stew on the menu because of the taxes are too damned high. And you know, and the war and the battles on the Eastern Front have caused a shortage of ale right now, but we have plenty of wine and beef if you're so inclined.
Yeah. And that's what I was doing. I was doing a lot of that, but I think you overestimate my players.
He does overestimate your players.
That's the thing.
You know,
but that's the thing, though. It's like they don't necessarily have to realize it, but that's there. It's in the background.
What I to it without them realizing.
And they're not used to grabbing plot hooks. I think that newer players, unfortunately, aren't.
Oh, these players have been playing for about 5 years.
Them, like what was that?
You've been playing for the same length of time as I have.
Yeah, but we talk about simulation and immersion. That's immersive, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's super immersive, because whether the players latch onto it or not doesn't matter.
Yep.
Because it gives the indications like, hey, there's stuff going on in this world that we may or may not be a part of, but it influences things. And so we can joke about DM masturbation all you want. And no disrespect, Wisdom. I think that there's plenty to be said for a more micro scale of building things and leaning in on player interaction. But I think it is much easier, and this is just my opinion, I think it is much easier to figure out motivations for why things are happening, why the world is the way it is when you go from top down than trying to figure out a reason on the fly why the taxes are going up.
Well, I also don't want you guys to get me wrong. I do all of these things as well. There are factions warring. There are moving parts behind the scenes. It's just, when we look at it as a whole, I think all of that is important. And I think zooming in micro as well is probably the most important. But yes, it does inform. And I love, from my perspective and how I play, like with your example of the innkeeper conversation, now I'm not having to come up with lingo because of the things that are happening behind the scenes, because taxes are increasing because of the war that's happening on the border, and that's choking out our ale supply, and that's why wine is cheaper right now or whatever. And I love that. I'd love to be able to put that in, and so that becomes brass tacks that you can actually see.
Yeah, and now what I want to add to this, because if anybody who's ever seen my videos, I love whiteboards, I love workshopping and visualizing and externalizing. What you do then is the new DMs are going like, what the heck? How do you even do that? I don't have a fertile soil bed in my brain yet, blah, blah, blah. Workshop that kind of stuff. You could say, this is the NPC conversation, write it down, and then just start writing up, okay, they're talking about fish or ale, and why is this and why is this, and draw it out. Start from one side and go, okay, they're talking about fish. Why fish?
Flow chart it. Flow chart it.
Do a flow chart. Do a mind map. I love mind maps, and you can just break all of this kind of stuff. Yeah, they're brilliant. I love to teach them, and but that's how you get there. If you're sitting on here watching this stream and you're going, oh, you grognard, you've been around since Tron and forever today and before Lord of the Rings even came out or whatever, you know all this stuff, it's easy for you. Sure, and you'll get there too. But we can sandbox on the fly. Great, you'll get there too. But in the meantime, if you workshop that and think about it and write it out and draw it out, it'll take you places you never imagined, and then you're ready to go. And then eventually you'll get that bank built up, and they'll go. And you'll be able to toss those things out, but take the time to get it on paper.
Yeah, and if you're a newer DM, I would piggyback on that GPA, and it's like, if you don't know how to mind map, one, YouTube is your friend, and two, if you're having trouble, simply look at history. Go back and do a deep dive. Just pick a culture and do a deep dive on the history there. You will have so many ideas about what to do in a campaign. I'm thinking. Let's see. It would have been 2 years ago now. Yeah, 2 years ago. The family and I went to Ireland, and we toured Ireland. But we learned so much about the history of Ireland, and you can get into the whole Catholic and Protestant thing. But there's so much fuel there for imagination and how you can translate that into a D&D campaign. And you don't need to travel to do it. You can just read a damn book, right? George R.R. Martin got a fucking TV show based on the War of the Roses.
Yep.
Good point.
So I mean, just go. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be a great scholar. You don't have to necessarily know all the ins and outs of story. Just read some history, read some Shakespeare,
and you're done.
Read some Shakespeare. I think reading and expanding your horizons, and whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Fiction or nonfiction.
You want me to ban him, boss? You want me to ban him? That's one of my moderators. I can't ban him. Well, I could. It'd be very funny. Sorry, Carl.
I can't smell him, so I think he's okay.
Guys, we're gonna move on a tad. Fantastic blade discussion. Exactly.
I do
what
have just
wanted
one
to-
last little tiny bit. I just
Fire
wanna
away. Fire away.
Talk out. Do not be afraid to be small and simple. Start somewhere, because we've been talking about all of this, and it can get overwhelming, and you can start to think, "Oh crap, dude!" If it's just or dudette, whatever person, if it's just
Yes.
there are goblins and they are stealing the livestock, just okay, just go. It just keep it simple if you need to, and start somewhere.
Yes.
Don't think that you need to be a world
agreed.
builder, make it all
This
stuff.
is
and-
very
You don't need.
very
You don't have to understand plate
Yeah.
tectonics.
No,
It's,
definitely
You
not.
don't have to do plate tectonics. You don't have to have.
It is absolutely fine to only build the valley with the woodland and a cave system and one village.
It is.
Absolutely fine. I think. I played a little
Yeah.
bit of the Keep on the Borderlands. It's a
And play
very,
modules, because modules are awesome.
very focused. I don't like modules.
Buy modules.
It's a very focused.
Modules are great as an instructional tool.
Modules are great to tear things from, but I find myself really
They're
going
great
off
as
the
an
rails
instructional
quickly.
tool. This is how you. This is the structure of an adventure.
Yep. Make a box
Maybe,
cake before
maybe.
you make another cake.
However, I do find they can be somewhat restrictive, and I also think it's actually very good. My advice to new DMs is to just jump in, make all the mistakes you want, jump in the deep end, and just have fun with it. Kill
And
your
read
party at level. Kill your party
read
at
a
level
module
1 by
first.
putting an adult blue dragon directly in front of them. Tyranny of dragons. Anyway, we're going to move on to Q&A. Guys, we'll get to as many of these as we can. Feel free to ask questions that aren't on topic as well. But we'll start with the first. And let me get rid of the ticker. The first questione. Amazing Gaming Productions. Actually, before I say that, we've actually made some money on this stream.
Really?
I didn't have Rumble open, and then I realized
12
that
pence.
someone was actually chatting in the Rumble chat.
Give me your rumble reins, man.
We got a Rumble rant. I'm not set up for this. Teddy Rex, Loop Vapor, says, I didn't realize you were doing this on Rumble as well. Lol Jack's first tittle Rumble rant. Theodore Rex has donated $1. $1!
We've made it.
We've made some money! Oh, I can finally
How much is that in sterling pounds?
About 70. Oh wow, that's incredible! Thank you very much, Teddy. You're in fact, if you guys didn't know, on the videos, the clips I make of this, it's actually Teddy that does the intro to them. It's his voice. So thank you very much. That's made my night. Actually, that's quite cool.
Liverpool.
Anyway, Amazing Gaming Productions says, how much world building is too much? We'll go sort of from Brass Dragon through to me. So Brass.
I guess it depends on the group. Honestly, if it's my group, then having two NPCs in the corner talking about what's going on in the world is probably too much for them. What you need is a big fat minotaur to burst down the tavern door for no reason.
Yeah. Wisdom?
But if you have a really, sorry, yeah, carry on.
No. If you're not done, carry on. It's just you kind of.
I was going to say that, if you're building a world, like you want to write a novel, for example, and you want to get as much lore as possible, you're not going to be Tolkien. That's the simplest way to put it. You're not going to, don't try and be Tolkien, but just have as much lore as you feel comfortable with remembering,
I
honestly.
will disagree with that. You're never going to be Tolkien, but try anyway.
Don't
I'm
try
more
to be
pessimistic than
Tolkien.
you.
No. Don't try to be Tolkien. Be yourself. Be
No.
you. You want to be at Tolkien level, but be you.
No. What I mean by that is, if you want to be the next Tolkien, if you can get halfway there, you're a great world builder indeed.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, shoot for the stars and
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Land on the moon's eyeball,
yeah.
and you'll be sitting right next to Tommy Lee Jones on the moon, just like.
But I did interrupt you, Brass. So if you're not done, please do continue.
I was just saying that build as much world building as you, as the DM, as the world builder, can comfortably handle and remember. That was my advice to Max, and he completely ignored it.
Yeah, this massive world map. Wisdom.
I would say there's never too much. You can always build, but it's not gonna happen overnight. I've got a world that I've been playing in for 15 years or so that is continually evolving, and it started off with a spit of land. And so there's never too much. Just don't think you need to have everything right now. I think that's the big thing. And I'd have to say, I mean, we talk about Tolkien and how awesome his world building is and all the stuff that he has created. And I would say Ed Greenwood has possibly even rivaled that.
Yes.
So it just
He's
has
still
to do with
trucking hard.
popularity, you know. Yeah, and
I
he's still
would
continuing.
say Ed is very much our generation's world builder.
Got to get him on
Yeah.
the show sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
If he knows I exist, I'd love to speak to him. But no, I have no illusions of grandeur where Ed is concerned. He is far above my. It's the same reason that while I'll speak to Mr. Robert Kuntz in private or over text on X, one of the reasons I'm hesitant to ask him on, even though I'm fairly confident he might say yes, is because I hold no illusions that I could measure up.
Oh yeah, no, I mean there's almost nobody that can.
Yeah, true. But Mr. Greenwood
You're
is
doing
one of
well
those.
if you can grok what he's saying and really and you've read him and you pay attention and he goes, yeah, sure, it's this and this and this and you get it. You're doing good.
I got to
Just
read
get
it
to where
first.
you can get
Find
it.
the time. Probably after Dragons of Spring Dawning. Any more to say on this, Mr. Wisdom, sir?
No,
Yeah.
start small and keep writing.
Kyle?
How much world building is too much? When it interferes with the agency of your players and their characters. When you have so tightly embedded yourself in a particular setting, and say you've done a timeline or whatever, and this is going to be the outcome. If you reach the point where no matter what your players can do, they're not going to change that outcome, that's too much.
That your point? Your answer?
It's a good answer.
Yeah. All right, Graph.
I say if it gets to the point where it's not fun, and also that if it gets to a point where you no longer have any ROI, which is return on investment, either in your game or in your life, there's got to be some return on investment somewhere, somehow, even if it's just joy, but keep it in perspective so that you're not just, I've known some people that will just sit and write and do and everything else and nothing's getting done or whatever. And it's like, have a reason for it. Do something that has a reason for it, and
Purpose.
make sure that it has at least some kind of purpose. And if it is just for your own pleasure, that's fine. But then think about the return on investment. Keep everything written down in journals and whatever else, and then see if you can publish it someday. Turn it into a screenplay, or don't. If it makes you happy, do it.
Or publish it as a setting, right? Put it on drive through.
Yeah. I
Always
say
fun.
that. Go for it. But
My
as long as it's not
answer-
hurting your life, then go for it.
My answer to this is there isn't enough world building. You need to get into the world building minds until your fingers are bloody from swinging the pickaxe all day. The world building shall continue until morale improves, sort of attitude. But no, if it ends up being, I don't want to say if it ends up being not fun, stop. Because I find that there are times where I hit a wall with building something, with creating something in particular in the world. And that's where the really dark, gritty world building comes from. There are events and happenings and travesties that have come out of some very dark moments that I have put into the world, which are not for children, definitely, especially not for your grandmother. And have actually, on some test readers that I've given it to, have raised eyebrows at me because it gets. Whew. I have written things that I didn't realize were in my head, and that's, I think, when you're at the point of exhaustion, when you don't want to write anymore, that's when the dark ideas hit, and some of them can be really good. But I'll leave that there because it's I don't want to bring the tenor of the stream down. Next question. And we'll go from me back to Brass this time, I suppose. When am I going to... Well, okay, this is just for me. When are you going to get animations for Rumble Rants? That was deeply disappointing. I don't know. Is there an AI that'll do that for me? Because I can't animate stuff. Next question. Nerdbase. A new name, I think, to me. Hello, sir. Welcome. For me again, what is your favorite book written by J.K. Rowling? I don't think I've got one. I've read the whole Harry Potter series. It's one of those things that it was foisted upon me by my mother.
That's what inspired his look.
Yeah. This isn't just how my genetics made me turn out or anything.
Will you order your Harry Potter on Temu? Yeah.
Oh, no, all right, we're moving on. I should have ignored this question. Question from Mr. Dune Trader, who's always got some really interesting takes on X. When does world building turn into a job instead of a hobby? And what does Elmin, Ed Greenwood, think about it? I think world building is never either. For me, creating is like vomiting. It just sort of happens. It's painful, it's ugly, and when it's done, I kind of draw pictures in it. Does no one else do that? No, just me? But for me, if I don't get it out, it hurts. And if I don't get it out for a while, hey, we're going back into this territory now, then it builds up and sort of reaches a critical mass, and then I'll have like a splurge of a month of a lot of work, and then I'll go months without doing anything. That's for me. But what about you guys? When does it? We'll start with you, GPA.
It becomes a job when you're getting paid. I mean,
I got a job.
That's a good point. Now $1 is shameful.
When we write our modules and y'all come to TFG and buy them, yay! It's super secret plug for me, but then it's a job. If someone pays you for it, I'd say then it's a job. But if you do get to a point where you're writing for money, I've done some of that. Don't let it become a grind. Don't let it grind you down. Keep your fire. Keep your passion. It's hard sometimes, but yeah, for me, it becomes a job when someone gives me money for what I scratched on my cave wall.
Kyle.
Similar to what GPA said, but not entirely the same. It becomes a job whenever you start doing it for other people.
You stole my answer.
Instead of your...
Now what I'm going to say.
I had a conversation with Grim Jim Desborough once. And regardless of what you think of the guy, he's got a lot of insight and he's got a lot of wisdom. And I remember him saying, they say do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. But the thing that they don't really tell you is that when you do that, you can never really extract yourself.
Yeah.
From that, right? I mean, it's not necessarily a job and it doesn't feel like work, but you're kind of always involved in it, day in, day out, 7 days a week, 365.
Yeah, it's like working at the pizza shop and you're like, I don't want pizza. I never want to eat pizza again.
Right. Right. Which is why I have always taken the approach the things that I love, because there's a lot of different things that I really like to do. I would never do any of them for a living. I would never want to get a paycheck for any of them, including world building or DMing or whatever, because at that point it ceases to become a passion and it becomes a chore.
Wisdom.
Taking this from the idea that I think job is a dirty word. So
I'm inclined to agree.
Taking that to be the meaning of the question, I would say when you've lost inspiration, not to say that what Jack said, in sometimes being able to push through walls is a good exercise, and you should not avoid that. However, if you're finding that you're sitting down and there's just nothing there, then that's the time to consume media, get your head out of whatever you're doing, and then come back refreshed, and then world build from there. Find your inspiration.
I agree with you. However, I want to clarify. I'm not pushing through walls. I am plunging into the depths of despair and pulling upon the dark side of the Force. That's what I'm doing.
Okay, that's good. That's good. If you can do that on the regular, I mean, my day job is writing stories and creating entertainment and content and whatnot. And so there are times when I'm not inspired, and so I need to actually approach the problems, which is I need to get to the end of this project and have something tangible. And so it can be a grind. There are ways of getting past those blockades.
Oh no, I agree. I agree with your message. I just wanted to clarify that I don't possess that ability.
That you weren't there. Yeah, for sure. No, that's what I say. And what does Ilminster think of it? I have no clue.
Yeah, you'd have to ask Ed, right?
Yeah.
You guys should all message him, tell him to come on the stream next week. Anyway, Brass.
Yeah.
Well, my answer is a very unique answer. No one else in the stream has said it, and that's that it becomes too much when you stop doing it for yourself. You're doing it for other people. Right now, you can world build for other people and put a lot of passion into it if that's what you're going for. But I mean, to use the example of, it doesn't matter what medium it is, we can all tell the difference between a corporate product and a passion product.
Yeah,
we can all if it's art, writing, if it's a D&D product, if it's a video game, anything like that. But at the same time, I mean, I did a creative writing class. Jack did half of the year. And
I don't think he even made it that far.
Yeah, he did about 3 months. And I found that honestly, my inspiration and my excitement for world building, maybe it's just me getting older, but it's gone downhill since taking that course, because all I was taught was how to do these things, how to world build, how to write for other people, how to write things that make sense, how to write things that aren't culturally insensitive, how to write this, that, and the other. And then when I'm writing, even though I know in the back of my mind I don't even agree with half of the shit I got taught, I've been programmed to write like that. I've been programmed to make everything concise and easy to understand. And like, I want to write on a page that this battle happened at this time and that, like Tolkien does. But then I'm sat there thinking, oh no, but the modern audience doesn't want to read that.
It just reminded me of something I wanted to tell you. Everybody should go and look up the interviews with Stan Lee, and especially about writing.
I've seen
that's pure platinum right there. And it's just like you were saying, Brass Dragon, he talks about writing stories that you want to read, and don't write for you, just write things that you want to read and write things that and he didn't even think about what other people wanted.
Yeah.
Brass,
Steady Jack. So,
would you say that because creative writing classes or courses, or in our case, university, has come up now a few times. Would you say that this sort of you cannot teach someone how to be creative? You can only really teach them the mechanics of getting over a message. And a lot of those creative writing students, I believe, went on to write copy for corporations anyway. When it comes to the rules they lay out for, and they were all wanting to write the next To Kill a Mockingbird rather than anything fantastical. When it comes to fantasy in general, just gonna quickly mute GPA. When it comes to fantasy in general, do you think that a creative writing class, not a group, because you and I both find writing together far better than writing alone,
100%, yeah.
but a creative writing class where someone is giving you how-tos by diktat is sort of a disservice to one's own voice. You lose the uniqueness of your voice when you allow someone to tell you what it should be like.
I think there's a possibility that you and I might be biased because the university we went to, we were both like the two fantasy authors in the entire thing, hated fantasy.
Yeah.
And so they were contemporary writers through and through, right? They hated fiction in general, which it baffles the mind of their creative writing professors.
They also
so we might have just
we won't go into that.
We may have had a terrible experience, and I'm sure maybe there are some creative writing professors and some creative writing classes out there that are genuinely helpful and genuinely good. But from my own experience, I'm inclined to think that as a university degree, like this is, you've got, it wasn't exams, but it was assignments at the end of it that you were marked on and graded on. I think that kind of sucks. I think the best, if you want a creative writing class, you're better off getting mentorship or some guidance from some actual writer. Granted, that's hard to come by, but advice from someone who is actually a creative person and not a
you say hard to come by. But I reached out to Margaret Weiss, one of the authors of Dragonlance. She's a lovely woman. She really is. Like, she answered my questions, and she gave me a little bit of advice here and there, and said she'd be willing to do other bits and pieces later down the line. So there's also another author. You guys know Robin Hobb?
I know the name.
The Fool's trilogy, the Fool's Assassin's Fool trilogy. Anyway, she's a fantastic lady. I've met her in person because my mother's a super fan, and I took her to go and get all her books signed at Birmingham University. This is a very long time ago now. And she was great then. I actually had an interaction with her last year. She still follows me on X. I follow her. Even after all the BS I post, she still follows me, which I find great. And she's lovely. And she's, I think, pretty much always available just to ask a question to. Mr. Kuntz, even though he terrifies me with his towering intellect, he's always been nothing but helpful. And I think if you come as a sort of a supplicant mood, and you show a bit of respect to people who have achieved something that you also want to achieve, a lot of the time that's taken very well. And I would suggest reaching out to authors that you like, writing to them, because I love
them
getting
on YouTube.
Look them on YouTube. I love getting messages from people who watch my stuff and read the website, and it happens more often than you might think. It's great because your people are interacting with something you produce. There's no better feeling, and I think that feeling doesn't really go away, especially when you're new to someone's work. Like, you could have the most successful author in the world, and if you like with Margaret Weiss, she's really successful. I'm very new to Dragonlance. I've read 2 of the books, need to get onto the 3rd, and I've just said to her, "Look, this is great," and she was like, "Glad you're enjoying," and she's watched my videos on it, and it's just like I having written stories here, there, and everywhere across the internet for a while. When people read it, it's a great feeling, and I don't think it matters how many times it happens with that. We're going to do
Go on
one more.
YouTube, learn stuff, and then
Mm.
I'm just gonna share this with your younger audience here now, so you can do books. The Fantasy Writer's Assistant. So this one is from Jeffrey Ford. This is a book. It's on paper, for you guys. It's not a tablet, so you'll have to turn pages. It doesn't take batteries. Don't try to put batteries in it, okay, kid? Freeing your creativity.
You're showing your age by
Marshall
the
Cook.
insinuation that anything takes
How
batteries.
fiction works. All right, just check that out. Understanding creativity. There's another good one.
GPA, you can even go
Writing
back
the
and
script.
look at. You can even go back to somebody
We
like
got
Stephen
other writers. Mark.
Stephen King, right? Who did basically an essay on story structure, and essentially it comes down to and for some reason I don't know why this isn't taught anymore in schools, at least here in the USA, about what it takes to make a story.
Yep.
This is something I complain about a lot, especially in concerns to Baldur's Gate 3 story structure, but carry on.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to have conflict, right? You've got the man versus man, and the man versus nature, and the man versus.
Well, it's that people don't seem to
Man
understand
versus
that there's
bear.
a beginning,
You've got bear
a middle,
on bear.
and an
You've
end.
got bear versus man.
There's the simple thing of just beginning, middle, and end seems to have gone by the wayside.
Yeah, but and if you're getting your creative writing advice from a professor in a university,
those who can't do teach.
Those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach PE. But talk to the. I have always tried to live my life by the adage of, if you want to be successful in something, do what successful people do. If that makes sense. But
yeah, in NLP we call it modeling. You take somebody that's done something that you want, study it, study them, everything that they've done, how they achieved it, learn, and then model that behavior, and then take the pieces off that you can't do, and then do the pieces you can. Modify it to your own self. Yeah, that's a
I was trying to make it accessible, but yeah.
And then I go
right, chat.
Because dude, when you start talking neuro-linguistic programming, their eyes glaze over.
I know.
Chat, I hate to stop you. I really do. We were going to go and get to some more questions, but we are actually coming up on time. I've really enjoyed this conversation, so I hope that you guys are feeling the same kind of way. This has been exactly what I wanted to talk about all week, and it's been a fantastic way of getting out of the rut that work puts me in every week, just in time for it to put me back into it tomorrow before the speakeasy on Saturday. Everyone in chat, if you have not yet, please do like, share, subscribe, follow. If all of you are to share this over on Twitter, put it in some Discords, it would really help out. We are so close to 500 subscribers. I realize we've sort of stalled a little bit because I haven't had the energy to produce a video. But if you can just advertise a little bit, it would be a fantastic help, and you would have my eternal gratitude. And we'll figure out some sort of payment system.
I do have a question for DM Wisdom before we go.
Fire away.
Since we've been talking about simulations and writing and creating and world building, and I'm a big fan, I'm a cultist. When you are creating and you are coming up with the voices of the, not literally doing the voices, but what they're going to say, how are they going to interact when you're doing the puppetry and you're writing the script, or I don't know if I'm a little bit curious. I want to know what your process is. Do you put yourself in that role and then come in it that way, or are you overviewing, this will talk to this and this will talk to that, or do you do all of it?
Yeah, it's everything. I come at it from all aspects, and ultimately, I'm looking to make it entertaining for me. So I know that I've got what I wanted out of it if I chuckle while I'm doing the edit. And usually it's not till I get to that point. Because in regards to puppeteering and doing all that, it has to do with, each character is being filmed at once. So I write the script and then I just do every single line at one time. And so sometimes you don't know how it's going to come off because there's no real interaction. So it's, So all of the above. I look at it from above individually as the character. That's what
And
I
do you
do.
think that that's coming from your role-playing experience or just influences your role-playing experience? Because if we're talking about a DM basically doing the same thing,
So
NPCs interacting.
I would not be in the entertainment field if it wasn't for being a dungeon master. Period. It is the catalyst by which that I became an entertainer, including being a musician for 35 years of playing, writing, recording, all of that, all stemmed from Dungeons and Dragons. And so, as an actor, that's all D&D. So
D&D is a fantastic exercise
yeah.
for that sort of creativity.
Absolutely.
So
It's
many
all
hours in the
improv.
green room.
And again, I do apologize. I wish we could continue talking, but I know several of you have to go, and I do need to wrap up. Sorry, chaps. I'm genuinely sorry. I've really enjoyed this evening. Where was I? Oh, yes. Do like the stream, as someone in chat has said. The likes are looking a bit thin on the ground. Do like it. It is your duty. All right, we're going to go through a few people. We're going to tell you where they can be found. Links won't be happening, so you'll have to go and find them yourself because I'm just too tired. Graph Paper Architect, we'll start with you. Where can people find you?
Twitter, mostly. So come and find me on Twitter, and then you'll branch out from there.
Yeah. At Graph Paper Architect on
Yes.
there. Kyle.
If you want to follow me, I don't know why you would. You can follow me at Dying Breed TT, just like it says right there below my head. Also, Jack and I are co-hosts on Nerd Cognito. You can follow at Nerd Cognito on X. You can subscribe to the Nerd Cognito podcast on the podcast provider of your choice. We're on all the major platforms there. We're also on Rumble. On Saturdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, you can tune into Rumble and watch the Saturday Speakeasy, which is no agenda, no filter, no script. Sometimes we don't even talk about RPGs. Sometimes we talk about like food and stuff. You never know what's going to happen there. And then, of course, the big show at Nerd Cognito. Can follow on X and keep up to date there. Oh, of course, you can always follow Jack at Lost Source Scholar. You're a co-host, man. You're a co-host, like it or not. You never leave the family, Jack. That's all I'm saying.
Once you're in, you're in. And PM Wisdom.
Agranak Studios. You can go to Agranak, agranak.com. Find all of our links there. And here on YouTube, I just really started to do stuff with X because of Jack.
I was bullying you.
Yeah, I don't know what to do there. I'm on Instagram and blah, blah, blah. There you go.
And last, but most certainly not least, one of my bestest friends in the wholest of the worldest.
That's not saying much. You've only got 3. I am the Brass Dragon 1 on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it. And occasionally, every now and then, once a month, once every blue moon, you will find me posting a ridiculously long tweet that's more like an essay, either on some random dragon that I've improvised and improved, or a breakdown of the new monster manual, which I disapprove of slightly.
I mean, your analysis of the new material was really intriguing because you were very, very fair and open. And it seems the more you've attempted to be fair and open, the more critical you have become. but you're still giving it a fair shot, which I appreciate greatly.
There's some good in it. Yeah.
If you're not following the Brass Dragon out of all of these chaps, I do actually recommend that if you follow any one of us this evening, do go and follow the Brass Dragon for those takes.
I say you follow me.
Well, he's actually taken the plunge. He's got the book, and he's actually reading the thing. And I wouldn't want to wish that on my worst
I
enemy.
sound more intellectual in written form on Twitter than I do in person.
No, you should just hate fucking put it out there on X. You'll get more followers.
I just want to know if a brass dragon sounds like a drummer smashing a cymbal when you're running around. It's like,
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you very much for joining the stream this evening. It has been a wonderful conversation. Everyone, if you've not liked the stream, please do at the very least. We will see you next week. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I know I keep saying that. On Friday, I will have the Delver on at 4 p.m. EST, 9 p.m. GMT to talk about fantasy simulations, specifically in video gaming, where we will be discussing the upcoming RPG, The Wayward Realms, the spiritual successor to Daggerfall, which will be being made actually by two of the original developers of Daggerfall. So look forward to that. Thank you very much for all your questions. Sorry I couldn't get to all of them, but we are running out of time. Have yourself